welcome to another episode of Soulstenance. In this episode, I share a little bit about the journey that I'm on right now and how there's always inherent discomfort in a growth journey, much like Frodo leaving the Shire. And when we do that, right, the inevitable things that will come up and the pros and cons of that, and why Joe and I believe that taking the journey is the most important part, even if you don't get to the desired outcome, because of the growth and the gifts that you get along the way. So we share a little bit about that and explore the nuances of the human experience in taking that leap of faith. So without further ado, I'll let you dive right in.
I think it's interesting, just like speaking about often the reality of our stress or friction is happening because we're not taking movement or we're not taking action or we're not stepping into something internally we feel called toward or feels like the right move. And we feel like stuck in stasis. And I think that can be a really challenging place to be. And sometimes it's because we have too many options. I think that's something that a newer evolution of this cycle for me is having a lot of options that I feel are good. I feel like are positive on the business front, that I feel are like financially stable and have the potential for significant reward, and not knowing which one to pick, and then like just spending this time not moving, not picking one. And it's like any of these different things would have and have done well, over this gap of time I haven't done anything. But there's a piece of that feels conflicted internally for me too, because I feel like it's taken me a while and was a neat journey getting to this place where like I'm okay regardless of what's happening too, and like okay being in that flux and learning to love myself and care for myself and like still enjoy and honor life, even if there are these things that aren't going exactly how I want them to go or I don't have clarity on. And so like that's really curious to me too, because it feels like it took me years to learn how to do that. So now I'm like resting in that, and that feels like the wrong place now. Just like, yeah, but I just learned this lesson. I'm trying to like use this ability to like be connected and be present and know that I'm whole regardless of whether I'm taking these different steps or not. And yet there's still friction. And that's in a way feels conflicting. And I'm sure that a lot of that has to do with my perspective of it, like how close I am to the situation. Like a more global view is probably those are working together really well, or in some way to manifest something, a lesson, whatever in my life. So I think that's an interesting side to it too. Is like the reality of feeling like I'm trying to honor like what I'm learning inside, and it feels like I'm learning different things that seem in opposites to each other at times. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Yeah, you brought up good points, and I think there's elements of the mind, consciously versus subconsciously, and I know for me, when I know either in my gut or my intuition or my soul, I know that I need to do something because I know enough to know it's the right move. Whether it all makes sense now or not, it's like I know it. And fear or doubt or let's wait. I really feel that it's that tendency for humans, like when you know you need to do something and you're not doing it, or you haven't made the decision yet. Like, as you know, right now I just made a decision. Feel immensely more pono. But the days in which I was contemplating which decision to make, and I knew I needed to make one, that's where most of the stress, I think for me in general, comes from. And it's amazing how quickly it vanishes once the decision's made. And it's like, okay, I know I'm now on the path. Because when I see it's like, here's the path. Have I taken every step that I can right now to rest and enjoy in the present moment? If I haven't, to me, that's where all that stress is. And once I take the step, it's like, oh, it's not going to be perfect, but I've taken the best step I can to get there. And I think that's really important. But I think there's an interesting thing too. I think where you and I are different is, I think I have a tendency to be more of go, 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 kind of like, maybe more of a zealous nature in ways. One of your strengths is being a very even keel. And like we said, there's pros and cons, right? Everything has an upside and a downside. And I see that play out for both of us where, sometimes like, oh, like maybe I'm a little too comfortable. And I think it's, for me, the learnings I have with something I'm going through right now in my life is getting more comfortable with others being uncomfortable, not being rude or disrespectful, not like that, but just doing what I need to do because I know it's right for me, and working through deeper layers of subconsciously wanting to please everyone around me and make everyone happy. And that's just not possible. And that's actually detrimental at a level. And so there's that. And then it's also being okay with things not being perfect. That really hit me this weekend. In the decisions I was teeter-tottering through, I had one that was quick, clear, and aligned with what I wanted, fast. Had I made it, I would already be where I want to be for something very important. I wanted it to be perfect, though. And so I got into this whole other thing when my core knew, just do this, get it done. It won't be perfect, but you'll be in a great position. And and then that decision's made because you have to make it. You need to get from A to B, and you're going from A to B to C to Z to, you're going all over trying to make it perfect to then get to B. I could have already been at B. And ironically, it would have been more perfect than what I tried to do. And so that's a big lesson for me too. And I think I'll leave it there now. I mean, so many thoughts going through, but it is wild how the mind plays with us, whether trying to make it perfect or this or fear or that, or once you make the choice, man, and it's not perfect and I'm able to relax in there, then it's like the reality of how fine everything actually is settles back in. What are your thoughts on that?
I love that. And I think it's neat to be open to be learning from the stress of the situation. Like the reality is it's a lot of these choices are stressful because they involve an immense amount of future potential, involve an immense amount of putting our chips that we've already made, like so far, like whatever our worth or on paper, and financially, and like kind of betting on something and going a certain direction, like there just is inherent questions, stress, unknowns in that. And I love like the reality of still having a deep inner life and still having like a deep connection to like who you are and your worth through, and still practicing, meditation, still practicing breathing, still doing the things that remind us of our connection to source, of our humanity, of the hierarchy of things that we value too. Like the financial is absolutely a piece. Like it's part of our story here for sure, but it's not the totality of it. And I think there's moments in that journey that it's easy to forget that. And I'm just enjoying hearing you like being aware of both. And
Mm.
not that it's not, some seesaw action in there, but that's reality and that's life. And I think it's really helpful too. I'm just grateful for the community you've built around you as well that helps point you back to that, point you back to your other values as well. Like um it's not just a financial game we're playing here. Regardless of how this goes, like you will be okay. Um and my belief is that it'll turn out, wonderfully. But it's a really neat reality, and it's okay if it doesn't. Like it doesn't. You won't have lost anything internally, any of your you-ness, any of your sourceness, regardless of what the numbers say on paper. And I think that's huge to come back to. And I do think it's cyclical. I don't think we can always hold that, um, and make the other choices we need to make. Like there's ebbs and flows of these different things, and I think that's one of the things I was mentioning before is I feel like there's at times where I get caught in I wouldn't say being too zen. I don't know if that's like a even plausible, but like being too chill, like just like it'll work out, so I'm not gonna take these steps. I'm not gonna like take these opportunities that are there. I'm not gonna put myself out there in a way that'll risk because it's all gonna be okay anyway. And I don't think that's wrong in a global sense, but I think that I'm missing a lot of like the joy and the fruit of life when I am doing that though, because I think that's a lot of our human experience here is getting the opportunity to take risks, getting the opportunity to believe in ourselves, to study something, to think it's a good idea and jump in. Um, I think that's why so many humans love sports so much. That's why, so many of us are attracted to fantasy novels or Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. Like there's just like, we love intense, stories of becoming. We love going from A to B and then from B to C. Like it's really exciting to what we are here. And I think like the internal is real and does exist, and I am worthy and I am connected. And when I just relax and just let that be, I'm missing a lot of the joy and the excitement and the adventure that is open to me here. That is an option. Um, and so I don't know. It's
Mm.
really interesting. I think it's a lot of
Mm.
both. It's not a right or a wrong thing. But I really don't feel like whatever causation we're here for, I don't think it's purely just to be an observer. I don't think we're just here to be meditatively sitting on the sidelines and controlling our breathing. Like I think those are really helpful things. But there's a whole lot of excitement in the taking actions, in the taking risks, in the
Mhm.
betting on relationships and taking chances on love uh and finances and travel and so many different areas. So why we like fast car. I mean, like, there's so many things that we're just inherently drawn to because they are risky. Because there's a piece in that it might not work out. Uh, and as much as like in that moment, it'd be really cool if I wasn't in this situation. Like we really don't like not being in that situation. Like we really don't like uh, tranquility all the time.
Yeah, I think it's no light without dark, right? If it was all light, then
Hmm.
we don't appreciate it because we don't see or feel or know the contrast, experience the contrast between
Mm-hmm.
what makes it light. You brought up some good points. I think it's such an interesting thing when whether it was you jumping into real estate or I think as a human when we level up in a big way or make a big choice that has a big discomfort and it's out of our comfort zone. It is out of the norm. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And when we do that, inherently, it is uncomfortable. And when we go on the journey like Frodo and Lord of the Rings, like, you
Hmm.
know, we're all prepared and we leave the Shire. Like, we have no clue what baggage is going to be lit up, what growth opportunities are going to come, how it's going to go. And I think that's why most people don't do it. That's
Hmm.
to your point, why we read the books and watch the movies, because we get to, like, as an avatar, like a extension of that from the safety of our little comfort zone, go on that adventure and come back. But we didn't grow. We didn't go on the adventure.
Right.
Uh, we didn't. We we didn't. And I think that's why most people do it. And it's humbling for me as I'm leveling up in a way of choice, decision, risk calculation, growth, opportunity, in a way I've never done, with all the tools that we know and we live and we
Yeah.
teach. And it's like that inherent discomfort. How quickly do you enjoy it, endure it, learn from it, make that decision as quick as you can? For me, staying out of that stress limbo zone, which is torture,
Hmm.
and accept the growth and like really appreciate that. Like, that is a part of the journey. And that's why most people don't do it. And like that's why there's so few greats, I believe.
Hmm.
I feel like there's that gap of the unknown and the discomfort and the risk, even if it's perceived, that keeps most people safe.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, this is interesting. Whether it's like being zen or being stable, secure, comfortable enough, and like there's a lot of positive stuff that most people don't typically have in their reality. I think hence why personal development and uh, benzos and alcohol and substances are so common, because we all as humans, we want that. Whew, okay, everything's fine. And I think whether it's a fear of not wanting to face the risk or the unknowns or the discomfort of the journey or the leveling up, or on the flip side, it's like, I know it's going to be fine no matter what. So, like, maybe I don't even need to play. Like,
Hmm.
I'm fine not playing. I think that's an interesting spectrum,
Hmm.
both typically keeping you away from going off with Gandalf and the
Hmm.
dwarves down, on the journey. And it's easy to forget when it gets uncomfortable in those moments of the journey that it was the right decision. Wow. I think that's my first sneeze on a podcast. Woo! That really snuck up on me. Wow, that was a full sneeze right there, man. And I think that's important. I think that's something to be noted. And I think what is also, for me in my journey, in this growth period I'm in right now, which is so cool, is another big thing that keeps coming up is being grateful that I started the decision, the journey, the leap, and like really getting back to that. Is this decision I'm doing right or wrong? I know it's right. So the timing piece can get me. I'm prone to that, right? Whether it's, I think investor mentality, or, whatever you want to call it. Like, my engineer, I like to get timing right. I like efficiency, and I know numbers. And so on the journey, it's like, it's never meant to be perfect. And is the decision right or wrong? I know. Um, Enough time will go by. I've already won, and just allow that growth to unravel and continue to face it in a way that is productive and loving to myself.
Mm.
Um, I don't know. I mean,
I think it's really interesting in this place in life too, like the situation you're in is like it's so similar to personal growth. Like even these investment choices you're making, like they're like investing in yourself in a way. Um, Believing in yourself, trusting what you've learned, and I think it can get really muddy. Like when you're a big, part of you've got a business and a bunch of employees that are like, part of you're participating in their income, and there's, you've got kids and there's children involved, and like Um, Not that it's not participating with your personal growth or valuing yourself to like invest in things you believe in at that point. But I don't think it's as clear cut. And you're in a really neat space where like you're your main dependent at this point. Like you're in a really neat space to be making this choice. Um, and it's a real self honoring aspect of that. There's a really like you believe in this, and so like it hurts not to pursue it. Like it's uncomfortable not to step in. Um, and and I think about like just the different trainings we've done, or spending money on learning things that that our intent is to improve our internal life or our knowledge about a certain part of spirituality or coaching or designed to help other people, but doesn't actually have like a financial tag on the outcome of it. It's just like it seems of value to step into. And I think that's a really neat way to step into our financial life too, and our business life too. Like how does this connect and participate with what I want to be about? How does this excite, who I see myself is in this life? Like, is this kind of back to the choose your own adventure thing? Like when we stop seeing ourselves as a pawn and stop seeing ourselves as like, I'm taking a few of the options that have been given to me. Like this is something you've actively sought out. This is something that you've found this opportunity. And it's not a passive thing to step into. It's not just like, I guess I'll accept this job. I'll accept this promotion. It's like you're stepping way outside of your comfort zone. Regardless of your confidence and excitement around it, it's still outside the comfort zone. A lot. And I think that's really neat. And I think there's back to like living life as an adventure, seeing it that way. You're winning by making that choice. You're winning by stepping into that, regardless of the outcome, because it's taking you along, a path that you're choosing and getting to express and experience your own agency. And I don't know. I just think that's really, really neat. And it's easy to forget that. It's easy to play safe.
Yeah.
But we're not, I don't think the majority of us were meant to stay in the Shire. I mean, back to the Hobbit references. And I love what you said earlier too about like, that's a reason so many of us like those stories and are drawn toward adventure and things, but we watch them from the comfort of our own home. We watch them from the comfort of a movie theater that very often now we can order food and out like we're eating a burger, which isn't good for us, drinking a beer, which isn't good for us.
Yeah.
All feel good, from the absolute safety of like whatever environment.
Yes.
And there's a piece inside of us that feels like it took that journey. And that's why we like it. That's why it's exciting.
It's safe.
It's safe. But we didn't. We're doing that from the from comfort, from a place of non-action most often. And I think like that's a wild thing in our culture too, because we have so much opportunity. There's so much potential in this country to live with autonomy, to choose where we work, how we work, what we do, where we live, how we vacation. And for so much of history like that, very few, if any, of those options have been available to people. And I know that's currently true for a lot of the world too. Like they feel very disconnected from my speech around having agency and having autonomy in our own lives. Like they don't feel that. See the reality of that. And I think it's easy to get lost in the reality that we have all of that, but are we choosing it? Are we stepping into it? Like we're surrounded by it. And I feel like we're in the game very often in this culture, even if the reality is like reviewing it all from our couch, reviewing it all from there's just a lot happening. It feels like we're in it. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's an interesting question and reflection internally. It's like, well, are we? Are we stepping into it? You're very
Yes.
conscious of what's happening right now, that you are stepping into it, that you are making that choice. It's not comfortable, but it is exciting. It is life giving.
Yeah, man, I think it's a very important thing of like that's such a especially with technology, man. Most of us are watching other people live their dreams and step out into faith and take risk, however calculated, unhealthy, whatever that is for you. They're doing that. They're growing, they're striving, they're putting themselves out there into the world and creating and being vulnerable and allowing themselves to be in a situation to fall and pick themselves back up and learn. I
Mm,
think it's the mistake that I even still for moments get caught up in of
mm,
it's not supposed to be that uncomfortable, and if it is, oh no, did I make the wrong choice? Or it's like no, that will happen. That is a part of the mind. That is a part of the ego. That is a part of being uncomfortable. But just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's bad or wrong.
right.
Like that is one of the gifts of the journey. And I think when it gets uncomfortable enough, it's easy for us to be like, maybe I should have never left the Shire. And I think that it's that moment right there where whether it's a technique, a practice, checking in, reaching out to a friend, an advisor you trust, checking the math or the research you did yourself, and like, no, ah, this is pointing out a growth opportunity for me. And
Mm,
maybe it's more uncomfortable than we thought it would be. And not only is that okay, if we approach that and address it in a constructive way, it is more than okay. And it's one of the gifts on the journey that isn't even connected to the thing we're trying to get
yeah.
in the first place.
Yeah.
And this is another life reminder to me of how beautiful that is. And I just think it's so important.
Yeah.
I just think this is a big part of the human experience that most of us miss out on
Mm-hmm.
and regret we didn't do these things when we get old. And the fear makes sense.
Mm,
Our ego's wired to keep us safe.
mm-hmm.
That's why most of us are so freaking miserable and
Mm,
unhappy or anxious or sad or lonely or regretful because we're not doing this,
right.
And I think just honoring the whole thing is pretty powerful. And I'm a walking example. We both are in our own. We all are to a
Mm,
degree.
yeah. Very
It's
true.
just how much are we 1 degree in? are
Mm,
we are we red lighting at 100 all the time? I think that's probably not good for most people. But I feel right now I'm in that 80%, 90% zone,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of cool stuff's happening. Some of it's wildly uncomfortable, but I'm okay with it. So, any other thoughts on your end, man?
I just, I, it's just exciting, man. And I think it can, it can and often does feel overwhelming. Like it feels more than we're capable of in the moment. And I think that
Yes, it can.
that can be a really good sign of it being on the path. That can be a really good sign of, because we talk about this all the time. And this shows up in science, and like growth doesn't happen until you're outside of the comfort zone anyway. Same with muscles or like
Yeah,
anything else. Like it has
yeah.
to be expanding. So the reality that you're feeling that this is more than you can currently handle is there's truth in it. I do think you can handle it because you will expand to that. You will grow to that. Um,
Well, to be clear,
but
I
you're
haven't
getting,
thought I can't handle it.
yeah, no, that, and I hear that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I think overwhelm is often however we process overwhelm, like is often a feeling that keeps us from actually engaging with that expansion point, actually
I
pushing
would
our
agree. Yes,
boundaries.
yeah. It can
Um,
sneak in quickly.
yeah. And I think that takes a lot of different forms. And I just think it's a very consistent, important part of our lives that we choose how we show up in that moment. That we choose that, like, I'm going to try this anyway. Um,
Yeah.
and, uh, and see what happens. And I think that's really, I don't know, I'm really excited for you. Excited to be, to be near that, and it's it's inspiring to me as well, and just I think it reflects back when we're around anybody stepping into that. I think it, in a way, passively, it can't help but make us question like what we're doing, and are we showing up in our lives how we want to. And I think that's that's one reason there's a lot of very ambitious people that have have a hard time keeping relationships. I think because it's hard for other people to be around somebody who's continually expanding because of the mirror that becomes, because of the reflection that it's not about that person individually. It's just how somebody chooses to feel about themselves next to that person. Um, and and I think that's really interesting. And yeah, I've been on both sides of that too,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for the lessons that come both ways, because I think there's a lot of learning in there. So it's cool, man. It's exciting. I'm excited to hear. We're wrapping up, but excited to hear what things our listeners are stepping into, and just I am so I'm so inspired by my community, so inspired by like people around me. Like that's often been, I know we're all wired a little different, and um, it's always been very empowering for me to see people in my community showing up and stepping up, and that's been empowering in my own life to show up for myself and to gain that courage. And so again, like as a friend, it's exciting to see this, and I know I am I'm gaining from like what you're stepping into as well, and just the questions it's brought up in my own life, and yeah.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I want to say one last thing. Les Brown, quoting Les Brown, but I'm not exactly right. There's a video, drove like 7 hours yesterday, so I had some good time to listen to a lot of audio stuff. And one thing he said in the video, more or less, was when you step out and pursue your dream, life will throw everything it has at you. More or less like that. And I just want to leave listeners with that, because I believe that's true, and it does not mean that your decision is wrong.
Right. Well
Sometimes
said.
quite the opposite. So I wanted to leave that little gem out there, and I'm not quoting him exactly, but I wanted to give him credit where it's due, because it inspired me. It's like, yeah, wow, things will get interesting for a short period of time because you're out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man.
I appreciate that. Just in wrapping up, for those who stuck around and were curious about what happened to my eye,
I was thinking about that.
I was cooking and reaching into a cabinet up above my oven and accidentally knocked out a glass bottle of olive oil that fell right on my eye. So, not as cool a story as it could be for having a black eye, but it happened in the safety of my own kitchen.
There was no violence. There was nothing weird happened. It was olive oil. Oh,
yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Cheers, man.
Appreciate you, dude.
Back at you.